Um, I think it's better to focus on one thing and be good at it than try to do a lot of things and kind of be mediocre at them. I was the
Right.
worst student. I literally I would flunk every single class I could, and then at the last minute, I would just ace every test so I could pass the grade. So Happy Aquarium was a huge game. Like we had 7 million active users.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Lost Art of Storytelling. My name is Nathan Salins, and today I am interviewing Jose Avila, and he is a co-founder of a video game company. Jose, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Nate. Thank you for having me here.
All right, so let's get started with our first question. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your childhood?
Ooh. Where do I start? Um, I was born in Guatemala, Central America. I am one of four. I have two sisters and a brother. Um, what else can I tell you? Yeah, so I grew up and was raised in Guatemala. I went to school down there. And My parents were, well, my dad was a diplomat slash, consul or whatever. So I grew up mostly with my mom since I was about 5, I think. Um, she was, or she is still, a CPA, accountant and auditor. She has her own accounting firm, and now she's mostly doing kind of like advising people or managing people's finances and things like that. Um, what else can I tell you about my childhood? My mom, it's funny. My mom always made, I don't know if she made fun or not, but she always said that I had to do. There was a mission for me because I almost died about 3 times in my childhood. So she's always kind of saying you're here for a reason. Still haven't figured out quite if I already did what I'm supposed to do here, but here I am. Um, yeah. So we were a close family. Even though my dad wasn't around most of the time, my mom pretty much took care of everything for us. And yeah, I mean it's an interesting childhood from the stand of there were always very high expectations. I feel I didn't fulfill them all the time. I was the worst student. I literally I would flunk every single class I could, and then at the last minute, I would just ace every test so I could pass the grade. Although I was held back 1 grade because I just didn't do it. I think I was held back in American terms. That would be ninth, maybe ninth or 10th. I think. No, seventh grade. I think. Um, Yeah, what else can I tell you about my childhood?
How'd you almost die 3 times?
Oh, well, I mean, so a few times that I died, almost. One time, I don't know really because I was too young, but my dad ran me over with the car.
Oh,
Yeah, so my mom says that he was backing out the car from the garage, um, and I just ran behind him, and he drove over me. Like my mom still says that I had the tire marks on my belly. But here I am. That was the first one. The second one, when I was 4 or 5, I think. I had burst appendix, so it wasn't like a appendicitis, but I don't know what the next term is. But my appendix burst, and we were actually traveling to another town in Guatemala, where my grandmother used to live, and then they realized that they needed to come back down to the city, and that was about 3 hours away. So finally got to the hospital. Apparently my insides were pretty messed up. They had to cut I don't know how many centimeters of my intestines, because they were basically infected from the burst appendix. And my mom's like, yeah, I mean, my mom might be a little dramatic, but, but she says that, she was worried I was going to die. And then the third one was, I was shot when I was 15. um, at my brother's computer company. He had a computer retail store. You know, we used to sell computers and software and things like that. And I used to work there after school every day, putting together computers or fixing them. And I, make money. And he had an employee that had a gun, and he was showing his gun to some other guy. And then he unloaded it, and when he reloaded it, it went off, and it hit me on my leg. It shattered my femur. Again, rushed to the hospital. I still remember the ride there because my brother and my sister, she was a medical student at that point, she had just come home from her like 24-hour shift that they have when they're in med school, and she like obviously rushed in and put a tourniquet around my leg because she was afraid that it had hit my femoral artery, which it missed by like 2 millimeters according to the doctor. But it did shatter my femur, so I had to go undergo surgery for like 18 hours where they had to like reconstruct my leg. They put in like a metal, like a platinum plate in my leg, and took bone out of my hip to fill up the hole. And I had to do therapy, which I hated. And Yeah, so it took me about a year to recover. I had to use crutches for like about a year. So that's why I don't ski or do any sports that might break anything, because I'm afraid of, like, especially at this age, I don't want to end up breaking something else and taking 5 years to recover.
Mm.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite childhood memory you'd like to share?
I think, particularly, basically, I mean, the best times for me were mostly when I was out of school, right? So the school year in Guatemala goes from January to October. So then you have holiday half of October, November, and December. And then November is the weather in Guatemala is interesting, right? Because it's in the tropics, but it's not. Guatemala City is kind of like high altitude, like about 5,000 feet. So it is warm, but it does have like two seasons, right? Like a dry and a wet season. But the November and December, it gets really windy, right? You have cold fronts coming in, so it gets windy. So that's like a kite season, and I loved flying kites. So that my memories are like end of year going to fly kites, and then December is the start of like the Christmas season, which really starts on the 7th of December with this old tradition that is called, in Spanish is La Quema del Diablo, which is kind of like the burn of the devil or something, which literally back in the day, they don't really do that. I mean, I don't know if they still do it, but you would take out all this like trash or things, and you would burn it outside, and you would make these like huge bonfires outside. And then that would start the fireworks season. So you could you could buy any type of fireworks, and I basically would spend most of my December burning things, right? Like just playing with fireworks, and so that's probably my best memories are around that time. Those times.
Yeah, and what was life like growing up in Guatemala City?
I mean, it was interesting because I didn't grow up in like in Guatemala. It's like usually homes are organized around what they call colonias. Well, back in the day, now it's more condominiums they call it, which is basically gated communities because of safety. But back in the day, it was mostly what they call colonias, which are kind of like neighborhoods, right? And you used to have, your neighborhood friends, right? And you would hang out with them. We didn't live in a neighborhood because where we lived was an area that evolved a lot into a commercial area. So we were basically almost, by the time I was growing up, my teenage years or whatever, there was basically nobody living around us. It was all like offices. So I didn't really have like friends from like the neighborhood. So that was kind of interesting, but I would just go to my cousin's house, and I would spend there every weekend, and we would hang out with his friends. And that's what I did. But I mean, it was fun. It was different from what I think most people had, because I didn't have that sort of neighborhood growing up, right? Where you had, after school you were with your friends from like next door, right? Like that wasn't my thing. Yeah.
What was college life like?
Um, well, I mean, it's very different than college in the U.S., right? Because you don't necessarily go away to go to college. Um, Guatemala is a very centralized country, right? And by the time I went to college, there were only like 3 or 4 colleges, I think. Now there's a bunch because everybody and their mother has opened a college, but there were only like 2 or 3, and they were all in the city, and I lived in the city, so it was basically I lived home for most of my college, actually all my college, um, and I mean I still had a lot of fun, I ended up actually going to college. Originally I wanted to study, I wanted to go into med school, but being a dumb teenager, when I went to apply for med school, um, they wanted like letters of recommendation and everything, which I had, right? I had access to, but I used to smoke cigarettes, and part of the requirements was that you needed to take a lung exam or whatever, and like you couldn't smoke technically. And I was like, I'm not gonna stop smoking for them, so I didn't end up going into med school. And then that's about at the time that I met my wife, ex-wife now. And I was like, I was gonna come visit her, and I just kind of like let go of like applying for school and everything. And my mom's like, well, you're not going away unless you like have plans for school. But by that time, I was too late for applications. So my mom is a professor. Well, was she finally stopped teaching at the university of accounting. So she, moved some strings and got me enrolled into the School of Economics in the university that she taught in. And I ended up studying accounting out of like, just because it was something to study. Like I was kind of like, I always been into computers, and since my first computer, I think, was when I was 4. And I used to love playing, and I didn't program that much back in the day, but I would fool around with it, in making little things. But I wasn't really programming. The programmer was more my brother, who actually ended up going into like computer sciences or software engineering. Um, but so I didn't want to study that because I felt like the curriculum wasn't challenging, or I could learn by myself. And I figured, finance, like people, eventually, if this doesn't work out, I can still manage people's money. I figured, so that's why I ended up doing that. So I studied accounting, but I never worked in finance. Like since the beginning, I was always working on tech, right? So I worked with my brother putting computers together or fixing them. And then I started working when I was still in college for a web development company.
And then what drew you away from finance and into the world of like tech and engineering?
I mean, honestly, like I did the degree just because I had to, but even while I was in school, I was working on tech, right? So my brother's company, they also did, we did software, and they had a point of sale software and accounting software. So, my accounting learnings kind of help with that, in the sense that I understood, how to operate a business software and build it. But I was never driven away from finance. It was more like finance was sort of like a means to an end to just have a degree, right? But it wasn't really what I wanted to do. Only the first semester of school, I actually ended up working in finance in my mom's firm, doing auditing at like companies, and I hated it. I just couldn't do it.
So how did you have access to computers at such an early age?
Because my brother, so he was into computers, right, and
From the beginning.
from the beginning.
How much
So
older is he than you?
my brother's like, I think, 8 years older than me. So my dad was a consul here in the States, in San Francisco, actually. My brother asked him for a computer, and the first computer we got was a Apple IIe back in like '84, I think it was, something like that. A big clunky thing with a green screen, two big floppy drives, like the 5.5 inch, I think it was. Um, and honestly, like for the most part, it was for playing. Like it was for games. That's what I used it for the most. But it made me be comfortable around them, and it taught me like how to write. Like I was able to actually write really quickly because a lot of the games were text based, so you had to like say like go north, turn left, explore or look around. So I was typing a lot, and that kind of like helped. But yeah, that my brother was the one that wanted a computer, and that's why.
And then after college, what brought you to the U.S.?
Well, I mean, so like I said, I met my ex-wife in my last year's high school, and she was from the States, right? But my mom was always like, "Oh, you need to graduate before you can even think about getting married." That was kind of like the rules, right? So, I dated my ex-wife for about like we dated for 4 years. Of those, two were like long distance. While she went to college here and I was finishing college over there, and then she moved down there the last year of my school because we got engaged because we kind of had to make a decision of whether we were going to stay together or not. So we got engaged. She moved over. I graduated college, and then the idea was that we were going to come back to the States because she obviously put her last year of school on pause because she wanted to come and get married. Well, she didn't want to. We wanted to get married. So we moved back thinking that she was just going to finish college and then we were going to go back to Guatemala. But at the same time, I was like, I like tech. I like, at that point it was 2003, which was right after the bubble burst. But there was still enough tech. There was still like Silicon Valley was known for what it was. So I was like, all right, if I'm going to try tech, I might as well go over there and try it. Like it kind of works out. So we moved here so that she could finish college. And then I was going to try out, to see if I could work here. And I ended up finding, a good job. And I just kind of like stuck with that. I started my first company was this company called Easyboard, which was a message board platform, right? Back in the day.
What's a message board?
I know, right? You guys don't really use them anymore. So back in the day, there was this, before like Facebook and everything, the only way that you could find people with common interests were like through, before message boards, there were these things called BB boards, I think they were, which was just like text screens where you would, let's say you were interested in, I don't know, podcasts, which they don't exist back then. You would go into like these message boards where like-minded people were into it, right? So it's kind of like a place where people could go and discuss things,
like Reddit or something.
Kind of like Reddit, yeah, precursors to Reddit, right? So Easyboard had this it's kind of like one of the first few platforms that allow you to go in and build a message board without knowing how to code or anything. You could just create your own message board, put it out there, and then have people come in and join it, and then you could have discussions and everything. So I started with them doing mostly like server management and operations, and then I started doing the software development, migrating their platform into a different language. And I stayed with them. I had like a short little, I was with them. Then the company was going to be acquired by Cisco, which is a big network equipment company. Because Cisco was sort of like seeing that there was the whole social thing was starting to happen. So Cisco wanted to kind of have like a a pseudo enterprise social platform so that brands could have social presence. This was before Facebook actually really existed. Um, so I left Easyboard to Cisco for like about maybe 6 months, I think. And then I went back to Easyboard, got acquired by a company called Kickapps out of New York, and they asked me to come back, so I came back because Cisco was way too corporate for me. Like I'm more of a startup kind of guy. Like I like to move quickly, and at Cisco I would probably have 6 meetings a day and never code a line of put down a line of code because you were just meeting about the previous meeting and planning the next meeting. Like it was always sort of like nothing gets done. It's more like thinking about getting things done compared to like a startup where you're like, you have to wear many hats, and that was kind of like what I liked more. So I was with them for about, I think it was like close to 9 years, and then um, when my second daughter was born, Sophie, um, my wife Damaris decided, she wanted to stay home with the girls, and she actually had a pretty nice job at a venture capital firm in the city. And I was like, well, there's a lot of income that we would be giving up if you decide to stop working. So I need to figure out how I can make that extra income. And I started looking for jobs. I got an offer from this company called Zynga, which at that point were one of the bigger social gaming companies. Um, and when I was researching about Zynga, I called a guy that worked with me before at Kickapps Easyboard. I knew that he had gone to Zynga, so I called him up to see like, hey, how was work at Zynga? I thought he was still there, and he was like, oh no, I'm not there anymore. I'm at this other company. My non compete doesn't allow me to, like I would hire, I wanted to reach out to bring you over here, but I can't. But now that you're asking me, then I can say, hey, I didn't ask him. He came to me. So he had me, he introduced me to this other guy that, I mean, he actually worked for us. His name was Suren, who was the founder of the company called CrowdStar, which was starting to do social gaming. So I decided, I was looking for like extra consultant work so I could make up the income from my wife. Um, and then ended up getting this job with CrowdStar, which was a great opportunity, and allowed us to have my wife stay home with the girls. At that point, we had two daughters. So that's how I got into gaming, right? Like my first company was message boards and social platform. Like they used to call it white label social network, because it allowed you, like one of our brands was like Harley Davidson, right? So Harley Davidson could go and create a website where it allowed Harley Davidson fans to interact with each other and like share experiences or ideas or things like that. So that's what Kickapps was doing. So I was with them, and then I moved into gaming, which is, Facebook was starting to open their platform for like what they used to call canvas apps. And that's when mobile, like social gaming, started happening, right? So that was the days of some people, you definitely weren't even born, but the Farmville days, on Facebook, the famous thing was like, help me like take care of my strawberries or things like that, because it's like this like virtual farm that you were recollecting strawberries and everything, and you were sending messages to people to like water your strawberries and things on Facebook, right? So CrowdStar was starting to do games like that. So I started with them, and that's how I got into gaming. I never really thought about going into gaming, to be honest. Like um, it wasn't a thing. And honestly, like when people think about gaming companies, it's like there's a different idea until you actually get there, right? Like it's making games. It's fun, but it's also uh, it's not what you think it's gonna be like, right? It's different. because at the end of the day, it's a business, right? It's not all fun. You still have to run a business. Um, you still have to deal with venture capital or like investors and things like that. So um, yeah, I went to CrowdStar and I was with them for wow, I think another 9 years, and then they got acquired by a company called Glue Mobile.
And are there any famous games that CrowdStar made pre-acquisition or?
Well, our first few games, right? So our first big game was called Happy Aquarium, and it was literally like a virtual aquarium, right? You would buy fish, you would breed fish, you would have to clean the glass. Like it was all like this game made on Flash, which is another technology that doesn't exist anymore. Um, and that game actually kind of blew up for us. Like we launched it and we had about 7 million daily active users on that game. Yeah, it was challenging to keep it up. My job was mostly around operations, so I was in charge of keeping the game running. I wasn't developing the game. I got more into development because since I was responsible to keeping it up, I had to get involved with a lot with the engineers of making sure that they didn't break the servers when they pushed out new code. Um, so Happy Aquarium was a huge game. Like we had 7 million active users. After that, we kind of like took on the whole happy theme. So we had Happy Aquarium, then we had Happy Pets, then we had Happy Island. I think that was the three happies that we had. Each one did a little bit less than the previous one, right? So like I think Happy Pets maybe got to like 5 million daily active users, and then Happy Island maybe 3 million. Like so, it's slowly because the market started like consolidating, right? Um, so that was CrowdStar at the beginning. Then things changed with the way that Facebook was managing their platform. So we decided to move to mobile. So the first mobile game we launched was called Top Girl, um, which actually was like a big game was one of the first few games on Apple, and we were top grossing. Which back in the day, the App Store was divided in like top downloads and top grossing, which games are making the most money. So making it into the top grossing was a big deal back then. And so It Girl was big game too, for us. After that, we tried to do a bunch of different mobile games. That it was kind of interesting. Eventually, we ended up focusing mostly on the female demographic because we figured what ended up happening for us was you had these growing up, the only gamers, right, or playing games were guys, right, men, right, or boys. They were the ones that were buying a Nintendo or a PlayStation or this or that. Like women didn't really go like ask their parents to buy themselves a Nintendo or a Game Boy. Um, and what ended up happening was with the mobile phones, right? All of a sudden, everybody and their mother had a gaming console or platform in their pocket. Um, and we realized at CrowdStar that there was a whole underserved market for women, right? So we started focusing on female games, right? So that's where like It Girl came in, which was kind of like it was a game where you were sort of like you were trying to like move up in like life, right? And it was about fashion and dressing up and doing like missions to like get more friends or whatever. Um, After that, we did a few other like girl games, we call them, which was Modern Girl and Top Girl. Um, and after that, our next big game was called Covet Fashion, which was a competitive dress up game. We realized like you know little girls back in the day, there used to be these things called paper dolls, paper doll fashion or whatever, where like they had these things where like the clothes would be like cutouts of clothes and they would put them on top of like a little mannequin. So we did sort of like that version on a phone, and Covet Fashion did well. Right around that time is when we got acquired by the company called Glue Mobile. Uh, and we had another game sort of like in development, which was called Design Home. We hadn't launched it. We were about to launch it when Glue acquired us, and that game actually was sort of like our biggest game in terms of downloads and revenue, right? And it kind of came into at a time where Glue Mobile was famous from like back in the day. They did the Kim Kardashian game on mobile. I think it's called Kim. I don't know, but Kim Kardashian was the the personality on the game. Um, and that was kind of like their claim to fame. Then they tried to do a bunch of other games like that with celebrities, and none of them really worked.
Mm.
So they acquired us, and we launched Design Home, which kind of like blew it up of the water for them. It was one. I think. I mean, I want to say maybe their most successful game in terms of revenue and downloads. Maybe not downloads, but more revenue, right? Um, and so we launched Design Home, which was a competitive interior design game, where basically, you're given like a blank canvas of a room with specific areas where you can place furniture, and we used to give you like a backstory of, say, oh, this is, Dr. Salins just moved to, his new home in Hillsboro. He likes, chic, whatever, modern. Design a living room for him with chic, modern, looks, right? Mm. And there's furniture and stuff that you could pick up and put together. And then once you're happy with your design, you would submit it, and then people would vote on it against other people's designs. And you would win based off of who voted, like the score of it. Um, and that game, I mean, it's still going. I think Covet Fashion is also still live. Glue Mobile ended up getting acquired by EA at the end of the day. Um, so they got acquired. I left right after the acquisition with EA, and then founded the company that I'm at right now with a few other ex co-workers from Glue. It was five of us that decided to go out and start this other company, which is gaming as well. Now we do it's more exterior design or like gardening design, because we figured it's kind of interesting, right? Because with COVID, everybody started investing a lot of money into their outdoors because now they had to spend time in their houses and everything. And that's where we figured it's like, oh, maybe this is what we should do next.
And what's the game called?
So this one is called The Garden Joy. And we launched it in, what was it, January of 2024, I think. We started the company in 2020. No, 2021, actually. Because it wasn't COVID, it was post-COVID, I think. So 2021. And then we partnered with a company called Scopely, which were our investors on the game, and we launched the game in 2020. We started like testing it in 2023, officially launched it in 2024.
And what made you leave after the EA acquisition for Glue?
Well, first of all, the opportunity of starting, our own company. The interesting thing was the acquisition with Glue was a little contentious when CrowdStar got acquired by Glue, right? Because we had been at CrowdStar, I had been at CrowdStar for like 9 or 10 years at that point. And the acquisition was a very contentious in the sense that all our equity was erased. So it felt like we came into Glue and made a lot of money for a lot of other people, because they were the shareholders, and and we figured it's like, okay, the next one it should be we should try and make money for ourselves. And then at the same time, when I mean, I had the opportunity to stay with Glue and EA, but my experience with Cisco made me feel like I did not want to go to EA because EA, I never worked for them, but from what I seen and talked to people that work there, it's a very, it's business driven, numbers driven, right? So it's very very straightforward, very focused on performance, and not you can't really move quickly, right? You can't try things out. You have to, like, if you have a business that is doing well, you just have to double down in it. You can't really be testing things out. And I realized from being at Cisco that I don't like that culture. I don't like a big company culture. Like I like to be able to make bigger impact and make decisions quicker.
What happens next? What does the future look like?
Well, I mean, we're operating, our game, Garden Joy. We're in the process of trying to, on investing on growth on it, right? So the market has changed a lot since our days with the Sign Home. Um, some changes in the platforms like Apple around their whole privacy push, they call it, has made it very difficult for companies to grow because it's very difficult to spend money in marketing to acquire users because targeting is difficult. So you have to have games or products that either grow organically by just word of mouth or fame, or have a lot of money to spend on growing it by spending millions of dollars to like get users or get it into people's pockets. So right now we're in the process of growing, investing, right? But it's investing very methodically to try and grow it profitably, right? Our company is kind of like in a break-even stage where we make as much as we spend. But if we want to grow, we need to spend more than what we make, right? So it's a very fine balance, right, between spending and growing, where you have to be very methodical about how you grow and spend money in it.
Hmm. And my last question: what advice do you have for the next generation?
Oh gosh, that's very interesting. Honestly, I think that from what I learned, I always been a very cautious and very afraid person, right? Like I'm very like calculated. I'm risk averse, I would say, and I feel like my biggest growth has been when I've taken like a jump, like I've taken that risk. For the most part, I'm usually like very, I mean, I stayed at most of these companies. If you look at my career, like I stayed very long at these companies, which is not really the norm in tech, right? Especially in gaming back in the day, people would last 2 years at a company and they would just jump to another company because they were always chasing the next thing. And I kind of I like the stability and I just been risk averse. But I feel like my biggest growth has come from just taking that risk, like just being able to kind of like trust that things are gonna work out. And for the most part, I would say that they have worked out. I really can't complain. Um, things have, I came to the States back in 2005 and, I don't regret it. I wouldn't say I came with nothing, right? Because we did have a life in Guatemala and like I we had a good thing going on, and that's why even the plan was of going back, right? We had a house, we had everything, um, but just taking that risk. Like I remember that first night we spent in my in-laws like back house or whatever you call it. Like they had a little like ADU in the back of their house, and we're there with my wife. We got married really young. We were like ex-wife. I keep forgetting. Um, we got married at 23. We were really young.
Mm.
Uh, And we moved to the States when I think we were like maybe 25 because it was 2005. So maybe 25, 26. And I remember we're there, just kind of like looking up into the ceiling in the dark room and thinking like, what the heck did we do? Right. Because we came from like being super comfortable and everything to like, I didn't have a job when I came to the States. Like I was kind of like, taking a plunge. Right. And the interesting thing is, it was kind of hard to find a job at the very beginning because everybody was like, "Oh yeah, you seem to know everything that we're asking you about, but you don't have experience in the U.S." And I'm just like, but I'm like, I'm answering everything you want me to answer. I know everything you're looking for. You're not gonna give me a chance because I haven't worked in the U.S. And it was basically like a friend of the family that he was the COO at this company, Easyboard, that I reached out and I said like, hey, I remember you were at a startup, blah blah blah. This is what I do, and it was just, what is the word, like kismet they call it or whatever, where he's like, we're actually looking for somebody that knows this and this and this. Do you know that? And I'm like, that's exactly what I do, and that's how I got the job. So I can't complain. I think I've been very blessed and lucky to be able to have done what I did so far, and I'm hoping that it will continue to do well.
All right, so we're gonna move on to the next segment of the podcast. It's called Nate's Eight. So I'll ask you 8 rapid fire questions, and you have to think of them like off the top of your head.
That would be interesting.
All right. So if you could have dinner with anyone, past, present, or future, who would it be?
Oh gosh. You know what? I really have a lot of questions for God. Like there's so many things that don't make sense to me. And that's been probably my biggest challenge with faith is trusting. Because a lot of the times I want to take the science way or the factual way. And I do believe, like my mom says, it's like you're alive for a reason, So I do have a lot of questions around that. So if I had a chance, that's probably what I would do.
And what was the last book that you read?
It's funny. The last book that I actually read was, my wife wrote a book called Come and See, which is kind of like a devotional book with stories of her life. I learned that one. I read that one. That's probably the last book I read. I don't read a lot of books, if I'm being honest. I read a lot of like just articles or things because I like to learn, but I don't sit down and read a book. Like I'm not that kind of person.
What's your favorite song?
Oof. There's a few. It's hard to pick one. If I were to pick one, I I have a hard time just picking one. I mean, I would say like I like You Two a lot. Like With or Without You is one of my favorite ones. There's this other song from I think it's Queen. I really like Queen. The Under Pressure, which is Queen and David Bowie. I love. I could just always put it on and just blow it up. I just like the bass and the theme and everything. Um, I listen to a lot of Spanish rock. One of my favorite groups is called Hombres G, which is a Spanish group from like the 80s, which is funny, but that's kind of like my thing. Yeah, I think I mean, I can't really pick one particular song, I feel. It kind of sucks because now it's kind of gone, but there was this Louis Armstrong, Wonderful World. It's a wonderful world. That's one. That was my wedding song. I mean, it's been my favorite always. Kind of sucks that it doesn't mean anything anymore, but yeah.
It'll always mean something, bro.
Yeah.
What's your favorite food?
Spanish. Yeah. If I had to pick Spanish food, I think I enjoy everything. The only thing I don't like for Spanish food is morcilla, which is blood sausage. It tastes good. I just have a hard time getting around it.
Where's your favorite place in the world?
Madrid.
And if you could go back in time and say something to your younger self, what would you tell him?
Invest earlier. That's what I would say, honestly. Like, I was very afraid of investing back in the day. And I realized that that's the only way. I mean, you can generate wealth by work and everything, but it's very hard. It's very hard. Generating passive income through investment is probably the best way that you can grow wealth.
And what would you do if you could do anything other than be a video game designer?
I would probably be, I would, there's two things that I would like to do. Either have a restaurant or just be able to play golf as much as I want. Yeah. Like play anywhere I want. Yeah. That would probably be that just be able to travel anywhere and play golf. Yeah.
And what's your biggest hot take?
I would say something that I believe in and like some people, kind of disagree with me is I think it's better to focus on one thing and be good at it than try to do a lot of things and kind of be mediocre at them. Right? Like I apply that in software, right? Like when we're building something, right? Like I'm not trying to build something that can do 50 things okay. I want one thing that does the one thing very well. The best analogy I have for that is like a Swiss Army knife. Like you can have a Swiss Army knife and use it to take apart, a screw or something. But most likely you're gonna screw the screw. Like it's gonna be all jacked up afterwards. You're gonna have to get a new screw. But if you had the right screwdriver, you could have just taken it out really quickly. So it's like sometimes there's tools that can do a lot of things, but they don't do it well. My opinion is that you should try to use the right thing for the purpose.
That's a good analogy. I like it. Yeah, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for participating in the podcast today.
Well, thanks, Nate. I mean,
very fun.
This is my first time on anything like this, so thank you for, introducing me to this. I enjoy the conversation a lot.